that was interesting. I guess I'm going to do this in the next hour too. I want to do nuts and bolts first. I do have a couple of videos now. I hammered really hard on Monday against, or the downside of cloning and germline editing. Today I want to show you some videos that really encourage it and the possibilities of it. And then the last one I'll show you is kind of a balance between the two. If we have time and the inclination, we'll have a little discussion, but I want to be fair and bring the positive into it. So let's go over the nuts and bolts. This is for you quiz, okay? The development of cloning for us really starts legally, ethics equals the law, starts in 1997 when we clone a Scottish lamb named the mother's Dolly, and we get the sheep out of it, and also in Oregon we managed to clone monkeys. Raised questions about human cloning because we're still with animals and we do animal research and we have issues with that depending on what side of that equation you come down on. Should the technology be made available when scientists are able to extend it to human beings? Now the Chinese in April of 2015, maybe this will do this for me. Let's do it this way. Open in a new tab. Altered the human embryo. So 3 years ago, they already edited through germline editing. And again, you won't see this science on your quiz. It's a CRISPR-Cas9. It's a little tool. It's really made up of RNA. And we can now go into chromosomes and we see parts of the DNA that we don't like, that we think is defective, or we want to remove it. And so we cut it out and we put a synthetic replacement in there. The point of this exercise with the Chinese was to try and take out a weakness in the human chromosomal makeup that allowed HIV to enter the system. It's a weak spot, and what they were hoping is if they could take the weak spot out and put in a synthetic blocker for it, then HIV would never be allowed to get in. So it's not a cure for HIV, it's a preventative. It's like when you get vaccines, so to prevent you from getting certain diseases. So this was one of their hopes. Now it turned out, I forget how many they had here, and I guess it's really not that important. They had, I think, maybe it was 70 or 80 eggs they implanted. Some of them only, of the 71 embryos that survived, 54 were genetically tested. This revealed that just 28 were successfully spliced and that only a fraction of those contained the replacement genetic material. So the problem with that then was, of course I just did that. Hang on people, I'm going to have to bring this back up again. The problem with that then was we still don't know how to do it without failure, and we don't know how to do it and get it right all the time. But we're experimenting. And the important part of what I just showed you is that the Chinese have successfully done it. We just didn't get the result we wanted. So this CRISPR-Cas9 tool is able to go in and splice away certain parts of DNA and chromosomes, and we're able to put synthetic parts in as replacements, hoping it would take. Once you modify the human genome, it's there if you allow it to go into production. In other words, if you implant it in someone, it's successful and it produces a desired result. Now, if it's the first generation, it's not going to affect 7.48 billion people. 10 generations down the road, maybe it's going to affect 1,000, maybe 5,000 generations. But you get out 100 generations away, so you're talking like 4,000 or 5,000 years maybe. The concern is you may end up with a new species. Maybe that will be okay. Maybe it won't be okay. Because nature's involved. Everything we do, we talked about this. When you start doing this, we're messing with the blueprint of human life. We've messed with the blueprint of plants, we've messed with the blueprint of animals, but now we're going to mess with the blueprint of human life. And the upside is we have cures for diseases, we get rid of things or weaknesses in the system that allow for things like HIV, Legionnaire's disease. I think it's 120 we have absolutely no cures for. Once we do it, however, it's in the system. And as far as I know, we don't know how to undo whatever we do. So what we do, we're stuck with it. Okay, so that was the main concern in '97 with Dolly. We weren't sure what to do when it came to humans. Should the technology be made available when scientists are able to extend it to human beings? If so, to whom? Who should have the right to do this? And we talked about this in one of the videos you saw on Monday. Hitler and his people thought they could create a superior race. And the question I asked, was he an only knockoff? Because if there's more than one person out there that would have that idea, and you can now modify the human genome to make it into what you wanted to, then you could get the same result if that was part of your plan. We just don't know that. So if so, to whom? What kind of legal restrictions, if any, should we place on its availability? Is there something fundamentally immoral and frightening about human cloning? Is it like sperm donation, in vitro fertilization, and surrogate motherhood, a benign form of reproduction that individuals have a moral right and a legal right to use? Now, back in the day, traditional sexual morality, you could not do that. We've come a long way, baby. We now have in vitro. We have in surrogate mothers. You could, a woman who maybe can't, I have a friend, I know a friend, every time she got pregnant, for whatever reason, her womb would not close, and she would end up miscarriage. So what they ended up doing is they ended up sewing her womb up so she couldn't pass the embryo, and she brought 3 children that way. Well, some women can't reproduce. It's just the way it is. But you can have your cell, your egg, because you're born with your eggs, and then your mate, and you put it together and you put it in a surrogate in someone else's oven, and then you get your child, and if they don't choose to keep it and break the contract, then you end up having your child is just carried in someone else's womb. So we have surrogate. That was never allowed before either. So the concern is, so now we're moving down the scale. This is that slippery slope again. How far are we going to allow it to go? So one of the moral questions you may see on your quiz is, would a woman have a right to clone herself, or frankly even a man, because your body belongs to you? We went through this in Roe versus Wade. Right to privacy. A woman has a right to control everything that happens in and to her body. So if you can dispose of or terminate a fetus, because that's really part of your body, could you also clone your body? And morally, if we follow through, now there's no law for or against it, but if we follow through the pattern of what the law allows in right to privacy, a woman and a man would have a right to clone themselves. Does everybody follow that? So what would be the legal ramifications if you could clone yourself? Would the clone have full moral standing? See, because we've always had clones naturally. Everyone's born naturally. We don't raise them in test tubes yet. We may fertilize them in petri tubes and petri dishes, but then we in vitro them. We put them in people. But if we could clone you, maybe we have tubes now, you know, and you just grow up in that, whatever that mixture would be, and before you know it, you got a person. And so you're really born in the test tube, literally. Would that be a human being with full moral standing? Would that be you, or would that be someone? Even identical twins are marginally different. Would you both have same rights to the heir, what you were heir to, what the one was heir to? Could you use one for body parts? Could you clone yourself just because you wanted spare body parts, and when you needed them, you just took them out of the tube and you took the part and then you put them back in again and preserved them? No one's got the answers to that, but those are legal questions that are on the horizon if we allow for human cloning. Everybody follow that? Okay. So this happens in 1997 under President Clinton's presidency. He asked for an immediate ban on all federal funding for attempts to clone humans. He asked the private sector to voluntarily implement a moratorium on human cloning. He started a National Bioethics Advisory Committee that after 90 days would issue a report on the legal and ethical issues. They had no power to do anything. They're not a legislative body. The commission called on Congress, those who make laws, to enact the president's proposal to ban human cloning, making it law. Now this is human cloning. Doesn't have anything to do with other cloning. They also called on Congress to ban all attempts to clone human beings, whether in clinical or research settings. So to produce someone so we could do some experiments and to see if we should go any further with it. The Commission's report contained a sunset clause to review the status of cloning technology and the ethical and social issues involved within 4.5 years. So sunset clause just means the law comes up over and over again over a period of time. We do the same thing with the Patriot Act. It comes up, we look at it, and we decide to violate the constitutional amendments because we believe it makes us safer. So 5 years later, 2002, under President Bush, called for a complete ban on the cloning of human embryos. Human beings, he said, are not research material to be used in a cruel and reckless experiment. This would effectively ban both reproductive cloning as well as therapeutic cloning. Now, why doesn't that go through? In 98, 201, 04, and 07, the United States House of Representatives voted to ban all cloning, both reproductive and therapeutic. So, quick government lesson. You have the judicial branch over here that decides if things are constitutional, if they violate our government's laws or not. And then you have the executive branch, which is supposed to carry out the laws and make sure that they're done the way the laws are written. And then you have the legislative branch. And the legislative branch has two houses. There's a House of Representatives, and this is based on population. So right now there's, what, 435, I think. And then over here is the Senate. Now this goes back to British rule. This was the House of Commons, and this is the House of Lords over here, and every state gets 2, so you have 100. Together you have 535. Now this House, in all of those years, voted together, a majority, to ban reproductive and human cloning. This House didn't, or this part, and you have to get both of these to agree so you can make a law. Each time divisions in the Senate over therapeutic cloning, not human cloning, therapeutic cloning, body parts, prevented either competing proposal from passing. On March 10, 2010, a bill was introduced with a section banning federal funding for human cloning. Such a law, if passed, would prevent research from occurring in private institutions such as universities that have both private and federal funding. Currently, there are no federal laws in the U.S. which ban cloning completely. And any such laws would raise difficult constitutional questions similar to the issues raised by abortion. So, why would this part of the government not agree with this part of the government? These all represent the people, government for and of and by the people. Why would this one not be in full agreement with this one?
Information?
No. They all got the same information. So I talked about Jonas Salkin here on Monday or not? Mm-hmm. Right? Boy, if he'd have patented that, that would have been a lot of money. And if someone ever gets this therapeutic cloning right, because therapeutic cloning is what held it up over here, the money involved in that to be able to stop Alzheimer's, ASL, dementia, to be able to block HIV, to be able to make cures for any kind of diseases or get rid of the fractures we have. The last presidential election, it's estimated that both candidates spent over $1 billion apiece. Money talks, BS walks, and cookies crumble. If someone could ever get a hold of therapeutic cloning and make it work, and have the law allow it to happen, and you get to patent that, which is how we operate in a capitalistic system. You invent something, you have rights to that for a certain amount of times, how pharmaceutical companies work with drugs. It would be worth maybe trillions of dollars. And these people get elected by running for election. I realize this is somewhat political, people. And so if you can get these people to agree with you, you either make laws in your favor, we'll get to that when we get to social justice and welfare, or you can block laws that wouldn't be in your favor. And so right now there's no laws preventing therapeutic cloning. Everybody with me? Okay. In 2009, President Obama, pledging his administration would make scientific decisions based on facts, not ideology. What he's saying here is we wouldn't have the sanctity of life argument based in religion. We would have scientific evidence, so we'd either agree with it or wouldn't. President Obama lifted the Bush's administration strict limits on human embryonic stem cell research. Now, I forget how many lines there were that we were using. So many embryos, we got lines. You can make those embryos reproduce so we get the stem cells out of them. So we have a limited number we can use. If they ever die off, we're done. That's according to the law at this point. So we shared how cloning works.